Hi, everyone. Thanks for attending today's application workshop. My name is Sydney Steen. I am the Creative Economies Coordinator at the North Carolina Arts Council. I'm the manager of the Artist Support Grant on behalf of the North Carolina Arts Council, and we're here today hosting an application workshop, co-hosting with Hannah Duncan, Lee Forrester, and Katie Cornell from the Arts Council of Henderson County, the Asheville Area Arts Council, and the Haywood County Arts Council. So this workshop is for applicants in Region 7. So those of you who live in Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Polk, Rutherford, and Transylvania counties. If you don't, no problem. This grant program is statewide, so we can just direct you to where apply after you attend and watch this workshop. I was basically going to go through this PowerPoint, which provides a history and the guidelines for this grant program, and then take some time afterward for some questions and answers. But before I get started, I want to make sure that if any of my co-hosts wanted to say anything before I jump in, just wanted to check with that first.
I'm all right. Take it away, Sydney.
All right, great. So here we go. All right. So a little bit of background of the Artist Support Grant Program. The name is quite on the nose. It provides direct support to individual artists or small unincorporated groups for professional and artistic development. We sort of joke, or it's been told that this is sort of the selfish artist grant. This is a grant to apply for to enhance your skills as an artist for your own production of work. So to enhance your skills and abilities to create work, to improve your business operations, and to bring your work to audiences. This fund is new. This is the first year for the Artist Support Grant Program. It was inspired by and takes a lot of the structure of the Regional Artist Project Grant Program, which many of you might be familiar with. But this grant program was created as part of the North Carolina Arts Council's reprioritization of funding, specifically grants providing stabilization for artists and organizations since the onset of COVID-19. So this grant program is in its first year, and we're really focusing this year on how we can support artists during the COVID pandemic and how you all can hopefully bring your work to audiences and also keep making work. So eligibility for application is pretty straightforward. This Artist Support Grant is for everybody. It's for all types of disciplines, whether you're visual, performing, music, literary, interdisciplinary, dance, you name it. Any range of genre and discipline is encouraged to apply, and you can be emerging, mid-career, or established. Your work is first and foremost in the application, regardless if you've been doing this for 2 years or for 20 years. You just need to demonstrate a commitment to spending a significant portion of your time on your work as an artist and developing your artistic career. I'll go through this. I'll hit the highlights on this because this is available in the application and in the guidelines. But like I said before, individual artists and small artist collectives are eligible to apply. So this means small unincorporated groups. And residency, you should be applying in the region where you spend the majority of your time. If you happen to live in 2 places, you'll apply in the region where you spend the majority of the year. We prefer that you've lived in for a year. However, as long as you have lived in North Carolina for 1 year and still live in North Carolina, you are eligible to apply. If you are applying on behalf of a group, this must be everyone in that group. So really quickly, if you are an artist who is a sole proprietor of an organization and you have already received funding from the North Carolina Arts Council for this upcoming fiscal year, then you are ineligible to apply. Likely you will know if you have received or are about to receive a grant. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Conflict of interest is very straightforward. So any current board and staff members of the participating partner organizations and their family members are ineligible to apply for this grant. So I want to talk a little bit about what the application will be judged on. And there's 2 criteria. The first is artistic merit, and this is weighed heavily. This counts twice as much as the rest of the criteria. And what we mean by artistic merit is demonstrated talent in an art form and overall excellence of the artist's work, as well as clear commitment to a career as a practicing professional artist. Now, merit is judged by, so your application will be judged by a panel full of panelists who are experts in the genre of which you applied. And so the panel review is basically determined by the applications received. So there will be someone who is looking at your application who knows that field, who knows that discipline and can speak to the artistic merit. Clear commitment to a career as professional artist. Now, this, of course, does not mean that this is your primary source of income, right? We know that artists, there are many types of artists, people who make, their primary source of income from their art, or those who work other jobs. Either way, as long as you show and demonstrate a clear commitment to your career as an artist, that's all that matters. And the second criteria is project merit. So the benefit of the project to your professional growth and the feasibility. So although artistic merit is weighed twice as much as project merit, you want to show the panelists that you can manage a project, that you're a project manager in the sense that it's within your capacities to complete the project you're proposing. So let's talk about the fun stuff, what the grant will fund. We call this sort of a project grant, but a project is loosely defined. And so one of the fundable items is completion and presentation of new work. So this means cost of resources necessary to complete or present a significant new work. This can mean applying for art supplies or equipment purchasing or renting a studio space. Career promotion is also that can be funded, and this is any project aimed at advertising your work or demonstrating your skill level. It could be something as simple as audiovisual documentation, documenting your work to put up on a website, developing a website, and portfolio, or creating some sort of online presentation to bring your work to audiences. So there's a real spectrum here of what career promotion can mean. Along the same lines, this grant can also fund training, and this could be a variety of training, whether it's a master class or a mentorship with an expert in your field, or a formal workshop or conference taught by acknowledged authorities. You can apply to have costs covered to attend a class or workshop, and depending on how this year goes, it might be in person or it might be virtual. So these are any sorts of trainings that are for your skill or professional development. It can also fund travel. I think this is an optimistic item here, and hopefully this will be applicable at some point. If you for travel costs, it'll be for transportation, lodging, and food with any training, conference, or research for your artistic practice, as long as it adheres to social distancing guidelines. And last but not least, and in fact, probably the most important thing I want to emphasize is that this year, especially in an effort to provide support to artists, we are allowing 50% of the grant to be used towards artist fees. Now, artist fees means taking up to 50% of this grant to pay yourself for your work and your time in creating and managing this project. For example, let's say if you apply for $1,000 in your budget, you could allocate $500 for artist fees and the $500 for the project. So I really encourage you, as you're developing your application, to see what costs are needed for the project, and if you have any remaining costs, put it towards artist fees, because you really deserve to pay yourself. So quickly, what the grant will not fund. First and foremost, scholarships for undergraduate or graduate level education. Now, there are some exceptions to this. If you are a student who is attending an undergraduate or graduate fine arts degree program, you cannot apply. But if you are attending a program, say you're getting your MBA in accounting or a PhD in philosophy or something non-arts related, you can apply for this grant, and there are exceptions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of your regional contacts. This grant will not fund projects that support or oppose a political candidate for office, nor projects that are exclusive to members of a particular religious faith group. This will not fund any nonprofit initiatives, so you cannot apply for a project that is serving a nonprofit, and you cannot apply for a project that does not have a direct effect on your growth as an artist. So you cannot apply on behalf of someone else or promoting someone's work. I mean, it's important that artists support artists, but this grant is for you only. So quickly, I'll take you through some information you should expect to see on the application. The information I'm going over is the minimum required across the state. So you'll see this in every application in some form. The first is the project narrative, and this is different from an artist statement. It's different from your resume. Narrative should explain your proposed project and how it will have an impact on your career as an artist. Now, your artist statement will come alongside this, but with your project narrative, you want to describe your project and the proposed use of funds. You want to talk about what this project will allow you to do that you can't do now, how it will advance your career, or how it will advance your development as an artist. Really make the case about how this is going to impact your career and how it will change things for you. So keep in mind when you're writing your project narrative to make it feasible. You want to present to the panelists a project that is within your capacity, whether it's cost, accessibility, or other factors. If you are applying for an ambitious project, let's say that requires more funding than the grant for the artist support grant, you're going to want to show the other documentation for the income for that, right? So you want to make it clear that you need this grant, but if it's a project that requires beyond the grant request, you want to show the income coming from other sources. You also want to make sure that this project is a logical step for you in your career. It should make sense why the tuition you apply for, the supplies, or the equipment is going to be relevant and helpful to you. And the more specific you can be, the better. So really explain it and connect those dots A to Z, right, about what this grant is going to do for you, what you plan to do with the funding, and that sort of thing. Again, some general rules of thumb. Keep it simple. Use simple declarative sentences, use active voice, and get to the point. And when I say this in the most respectful way, the panelists are going to look at a lot of applications. So just try to be succinct, observe the space and page limits, and say what you need to say as efficiently as possible. And answer the 6 classic questions: who, what, why, where, when, and how. After you create a draft of your application, go back and reread it and see if you haven't answered one of these questions and make sure they're addressed. Keep in mind that the project narrative is separate from your artist statement, though both are required for this application. So the project narrative is going to focus on the practical needs and outcomes of your project. An artist statement is going to focus on the key ideas and concepts which you are exploring through your artistic practice, right? When you are drafting your application, I also recommend that you ask someone to read it. So ask someone either unconnected to the arts or someone in the arts, but who can give you a third-party perspective, an unbiased review, and see what they say. If there's any items that are unclear or might need a little bit more editing, it's always good to have someone look it over before you submit. So talking about the budget, first I want to emphasize that this is not a matching grant. You are not required to spend your own money. However, for those projects that might require more funding outside of this grant or a little bit more ambitious, in the income and expenses budget, we've allowed for a third column called match. And I want to encourage everyone to sort of view this instead as other sources of income. For most of you, you might only use these first 2 columns, which is the total amount and the grant amount. And if you're just using the grant, these will be one and the same. But we are allowing for a third column for anyone to list any additional expenses or sources of income should it be applicable to the project you're proposing. Description can be quite simple. So for example, I'll just use a past experience that I had. So let's say that you are preparing a body of work for some new paintings. So description, you could say roll of canvas, or oil paints, or artist supplies, and provide more description in your project narrative. You don't have to be extremely detailed, but try to provide as much as you can. I know that some items might not be signed, sealed, and delivered, so just try to be as descriptive as you can and break down as much as you can when describing the budget. And the income is sort of the same thing. For a lot of you, this might just be one line item, and it might just say artist support grant. But for those of you who do have other sources of income or any in-kind support, you can also list it here. And again, you might just be using these first 2 columns, but if you do have other sources, you are welcome to list them in that third column under match. So here's what I mean when I talk about providing more detail. These are two examples of travel budget. So on the left, let's say someone fills out $600 for travel. The panelists could see this and see how you got to that point, that you probably did some calculations and you probably thought through what it might cost, but there's not much to back it up. Example 2 is what you want to aim for. Let's say you break it down into further subsections of mileage, lodging, and meals. And again, this is just an example, but in some things you might not have solidified, but when crafting your budget, whether expenses or income, you want to try to provide as much information as possible. Supporting documentation is not required. However, I recommend it if you are using any professional services, or if you're attending a workshop, or finding quotes. You want to have this documentation ready, and if you'd like to include it in your application to sort of back up what you've listed in your budget. Now, for classes and workshops, it is required that you prove the cost of that, so you will need to include that with your budget. And also, say if you're studying with a specific teacher or a mentor, or you're doing a one-on-one, say you chose this person, you'll have to provide documentation of the teacher's credibility. Now, this isn't so much as a budget documentation as more as an overall supporting documentation for your application, but I just want to make sure that it is noted. And I want to emphasize, you are not required to spend your own money. We do allow you to show other sources of income, and you might need to show it if it's a more ambitious project. If you've secured donations, you're welcome to list it. But you just want to make sure that you leave enough room on the expected income side to make it clear that you actually do need this grant. If you're doing a project that costs $10,000 and you have the majority of the money coming in from other sources, it might be hard to make the case about why you need this specific grant in comparison to someone else. So just make it clear that this grant is needed for the project. So quickly, I'll talk about resumes and bios. For those of you who are familiar or not familiar with artistic resumes, they essentially outline your experience and your history of your artistic career. So they should focus on your activities as an artist. This could include exhibitions, performances, workshops you've taught or taken, any panels you've attended, any residencies or lectures. For those of you that have been in the field for a while and are established artists, we recommend that you keep it to the greatest hits. So the resume should be no longer than 2 to 4 pages. And try to just be succinct. And for those of you who are worried about your limited experience as an artist, take this time to foreground your existing artistic achievements and then condense your other work into a more broad background information. This is an opportunity for you to use the situation to make the case that this grant is especially meaningful and important in your step in developing your artistic career. So do not be concerned if you're worried about creating an artistic resume that might not be as long as some other ones. Just make the case and tell your story. If you have limited experience as an artist, that's okay. Just sort of use your background and your experience now to tell the panelists about why this is important for your career. So I mentioned before that the application is judged upon 2 sets of criteria. The first is artistic merit, and the second is project. Now, work samples are the most important part of this application. They are the first thing that the panelists will see, and strong, high-quality work samples are essential for a successful application. They are the first stage in every process for the artistic evaluation. So you want to be selective and pay attention to what you choose to submit. Now, I do want to clarify, teaching artists, of course, you're welcome to apply for projects, but you want to highlight the work that you create. We get questions about this a lot. So these work samples, for everyone applying, this is for your work that you create. So be selective. You want to choose samples that you consider to be strong and recent representations of the quality of your work. This means work completed within the last 3 years. If you're worried about finding enough work you've created in the last 3 years, or maybe your timeline for creating work is a little bit slower, or just let us know. We can help you sort of figure that out and choose what to submit. Your work samples must also be cohesive and relevant to the project you have proposed. Oh, so sorry. My cat just sat on the keyboard. Let me get back to, all right, bear with me. Sorry, everybody.
You're totally fine. It happens.
Because my cat was also interested in this. So work samples, you might be an artist who works in many different disciplines and genres, and you're going to want to think of this application holistically. So let's say you work in the medium of photography and performance art. Now think about the project you are proposing. Is it related to your photography? Is it related to your performance art? You're going to want to choose work samples that fit the genre of which you're applying for. You want to choose work samples that are relevant. Now, an inventory list should accompany the work samples provided. So you'll upload the work samples, and then the inventory list will provide some basic descriptions and labeling for each sample provided. I'll take you through discipline by discipline now, and if you have any questions, just let me know. So dance and performing arts, you can upload up to 3 recorded performances, the total time of which may not exceed 10 minutes. Now, when you provide your description for the work sample, you're going to want to include date and location of the performance, the title of the piece, the names of any key collaborators, and also a short summary to provide context if you wish. Music, you may also provide up to 3 recorded performances, the total time for which may not exceed 10 minutes, and this can be audio or video. Now, composers and songwriters, you are also encouraged to submit scores, lyrics, or lead sheets as you find appropriate. The description for your work samples will include date and location of performance, the title of the piece, any key collaborators, and also a short summary for context. Writing. So there's several different disciplines within the literary arts that we will accept for writing. This includes prose, poetry, fiction, creative nonfiction, and any playwrights. So fiction, creative nonfiction, and playwrights, you may submit no more than 12 pages each of 1 to 2 minutes. Poets, you may submit 5 to 7 poems. And playwrights, you can also submit documentation of a recorded performance if you have a staged reading of a play. These videos may not exceed 5 minutes, so be selective. I want to spend some time right now on the work samples for visual arts and crafts. You may include up to 15 images of your work. Now, images must be high quality, and this means that they may not be blurry or pixelated. The inventory list for your work samples is very straightforward. We're just going to need for each piece the title, the date of completion, the medium, and the dimensions. So film, you may submit documentation of 1 or more completed films, and the video clips may not exceed 5 minutes. The description, you can include the date and location of the performance, the title of the piece, the name of key collaborators, including directors or choreographers, and also a short summary for context. Now, I just want to note, if you are uploading video or audio work samples, especially if they're high quality, the file sizes might get quite large. And so we would like you all to use links for your videos, whether you're using the platforms of YouTube or Vimeo or any other platform. And please indicate if the work sample is professionally mastered. We do not want MP4s directly uploaded to the application, as they will crash. And so if you have any questions about providing links to your videos, please reach out and let us know. So work samples must be only, and they must be completed within the past 3 years. Again, if you have any questions about if your work will fit into this, or if you're having concerns about finding enough work, just let us know. Now, real quick, actually, I'm going to open up a different presentation because I want to take some time to actually provide more detail about the work samples for visual arts. So bear with me real quick as I open up a different but similar file here. We get a lot of questions about visual arts work samples, and so I just want to take you through some good examples of what to look for, if whether you're 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. Okay, so real quick for visual arts, some good examples. So no keystoning. That's when the work doesn't really line up with the frame of the photograph. You know, you get that sort of trapezoidal shape. You want images straight on. You want clear, high quality work, the image of the work only, and a simple background. So I took two past regional artist project grant winners. The one on the left is Liz Kelly pottery. So you can see here this 3-dimensional object is up front, you know, focused on a simple background, and everything is sort of visible. Now, 3-dimensional work can also, you can either upload multiple images of different viewpoints, or if you want to create sort of a composite images showing the different viewpoints of the 3-dimensional work to get all, you know, all sides. The 2-dimensional work on the right is by Antoine Williams. And so this is a collage piece. As you can see, just the picture plane is included in the work sample, right? You don't see the frame, you don't see anything else. You only see the work to be judged. So Pitt County Arts Council also always has some great suggestion when it comes to work samples. And I borrowed these from one of their webinars. There's a story about essentially a panelist looks at these two images to be considered for, you know, the application. On the left, the panelist says, sure, I'll look at this image. Also the brick wall and the pedestal is included, right? So the point is that if you want the work to be considered in the work sample, you only need to show the work. So an example on the right is what you want to aim for. The only thing to be focused on and to be looked at is the work. So for 2-dimensional work, this is examples of what's not to do. Again, unless you're including the brick wall and the pedestal beneath it, the image on the left is not recommended, nor is the one on the right. You're going to want to aim for something like this. For 2-dimensional work, this is just the picture plane, right? This indicates to the panelists that you are to be judging only the painting, unless for some reason the frame or any other factors are integral to the work, in which case you can provide context. So letters of recommendation are sometimes required, they're sometimes optional, but they're the least important part of this proposal. Now, if you do choose to include letters of recommendation, you want to include qualified references who can speak specifically and enthusiastically about your abilities as an artist. So this is not a personal recommendation, this is a professional recommendation. So when you're choosing your references, you're going to want to choose people who have firsthand knowledge of your work as an artist. Again, they should be professional, and you want to choose someone who has had recent interactions with your work. So choose someone who's known the work you've created in the past few years, not someone from 10 years ago, right? Your work and your practice may have changed dramatically since then, and you want someone familiar with your work now, the work with which you are applying. And here's a quick application checklist. So the first thing is the application profile. This is basic contact information of the applicant, and none of this information will be used against you. It's just basic contact information, also to see the variety of artists that we get submitting. Narrative is the project narrative, again, how you propose to use the funds in the grant. The artist statement is separate. It is describing your work and the key ideas and goals that drive you to create. Now, if you have any questions about creating an artist statement, I can send along some resources or some suggestions on what to include. And we ask that the statement be no longer than 1 typed page. Now, your artist resume is also included. Again, 2 to 4 pages, and then this frames your artistic experience in your career. Budget support. Again, if you're intending any costs of registration or workshops, you want to include those. Any other support for quotes or materials, you may also include for your budget. And support materials, this is again not a very important section compared to some of the others, but I would say that if you choose to include support materials, you want to filter it through the first question of, will this enhance your application? If it's a support material that's not going to enhance your application, I would think twice before including it. But if you do include support materials, they must be relevant to the project. And last and certainly not least, in fact, probably the most important, work samples and inventory list, that of which we just went over. And your deadline for this region is September 30th. So you apply, you wait to hear back, and if you are awarded a grant, congratulations. I hope you do receive a grant. You will be entering into a contractual agreement with the Haywood County Arts Council. They are the primary contact for your region. And so if you use any promotional or marketing materials for the project, you must demonstrate the correct use of the North Carolina Arts Council logo and credit line, and we are happy to help you and provide you with that information upon receiving your contract. And also projects must be completed before June 30th, 2021. This is the end of the fiscal year. And every project needs to be completed before then. Now, you may apply for projects which are currently ongoing, but they will be finished before this date, or you can start a new project. So it's up to you, but they have to be finished before June 30th. So if you have any questions, of course, you are welcome to ask any of the regional arts councils within your region. Well, myself, and I will put my information in the chat box, but also my name is Sydney Steen. You can find my information at ncarts.org, which is the North Carolina Arts Council's website. I'm right there in the staff directory. Please send me an email whenever you need to. But if you have any specific questions about the application or just the grant program in general, the primary contact for your region will be Lee Forrester at the Haywood County Arts Council. Here's the phone and email and the website. Now, I would probably assume that email is going to be the best way to reach people during this time. But again, anyone else can weigh in now. I think this is all that I have to address specifically with this PowerPoint, but I'd like to go ahead and stop sharing the screen and we can sort of do a question and answer as needed. So I think hopefully this is working. So Katie or Hannah or Lee, is there anything that you wanted to add in? I know that right now I think we're probably going to leave this time for question and answer, and I did see some questions popping up in the chat. And you've answered that about the application. So, all right. So if anyone has any questions right now, feel free to enter it into the chat or ask, or I don't know, Katie, Lee, or Hannah, is there anything you want to add prior?
I was going to address that question publicly since it was a private question.
Okay.
We did have someone ask if you could save your application, if you're using the online form and come back later. That's not an option through Google Forms. So what I recommend is downloading the Word application and drafting your responses and then copying and pasting them into the form when you're ready to complete it.
Sounds good.
Hannah, were there other questions?
There were. All right, so let me pull those up really quickly. There was a question about if there are specific guidelines about image sizes, file limits, and resolution for work samples or supporting documents. I believe that was covered in the workshop, but Sydney or Katie, would you guys mind just reiterating what that answer is?
Yeah, there's really no sort of size limit, except for the fact that your work sample should be high quality, and that does present the conundrum of larger file sizes. Say that when you're formatting your file sizes, especially if they are JPEGs or image-based, you might want to save them as the web sized, you know, the one where it looks good on the computer, but it's not the quality you need for printing high quality. So 300 DPI is typically what you want to use for image-based work. With video and audio, again, the URL and the link will help sort of navigate that larger file size. Yeah, so as long as it looks good on the screen, you're good to go.
Thank you, Sydney. And the next question we had was for grant recipients. When the artwork is completed, is it expected that the completed work is shared / presented back with the council in a formal manner?
We would love to see what you've done. Your final report will take care of the information that we need for your project. However, feel free to share all the information you want. We really want to take time to promote these projects on the regional platforms and also North Carolina Arts Council. So there is specific information required in the final report for your project. And that'll all be taken care of sort of in one final document to be completed 30 days after your project is finished. But the more information, the better, because we love to hear about it, right? I mean, I don't know if you all have any preferences with that beyond the final report, but the more the better.
We do have a question. Leslie says she was awarded the grant in 2015 for a kiln, and she gave the grant back because she was diagnosed with cancer. She's 100% cancer free. She's reapplying, but her 3-year portfolio is not as extensive as her 2015 portfolio. What do I do?
That's a great question. You should try to include as much as you can from the past 3 years. But again, your circumstances, you know, your work may not be has been produced as much in the last 3 years, and that's okay. Just maybe provide that context in your application. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to apply again, and that's really cool that you were awarded that money for a kiln, so hopefully you can do it again. But yeah, just do your best with including as much for 3 years, but 3 to 5 years, I mean, 5 years is still pretty recent. You know, it would be different if it was 10 years ago. So I think that's fine, Leslie, as long as you just provide some context and explain, you know, sort of the situation of why you might not have as much recent work. I see in the chat, it says on the application in the project description narrative section, it says there's a 1,000-word limit. Does this word limit include the artist statement and project description? This includes, I would say yes, because the artist statement is going to be 1 page. It's 250 words, you know, approximately. So try to keep both within that 1,000-word limit. If you tend to go over, if you need help editing, just let any of us know. We can help you do that. And then Alan asks, is an upgrading of audio equipment to better market myself as an online studio musician in the COVID age a reasonable basis for a grant? Absolutely, this is exactly what it can be used for. If you have a project or if you want to bring your practice to audiences and getting new equipment will help you do that, 100% apply. You should apply for that no matter what. That's a perfect example of career promotion and completing and presenting new work.
I have another question. Would that be other, oh wait, what is it? Would that be other programs that are similar to, would that be other programs that are similar to what you are doing?
It says the support section.
The
Would
support
that be
section.
other
Oh.
programs that are similar to what you are doing?
Thank you, Lee.
So the support materials section, the supporting documentation section, just keep it relevant to the project of what you're proposing. If it's not going to be relevant to the project or specific to it, then I wouldn't include it. The panelists are going to be looking this over, and it should be hyper focused on your project proposal. So hopefully that'll help you filter out what to include and what not to include. Your resume and other stuff will sort of show other projects and other experience. So if you're worried about showing all of your experience, your resume should hopefully take care of that. Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, you just keep in mind, it's the work samples and the project narrative that are going to carry the weight of this application. So don't get too lost in the weeds on the supporting documentation or the resume or the letters of recommendation. Really focus on the artistic merit in the project section.
One question is, where do we access the application? And that would be available from any of the Arts Council websites. There is a link to the online application as well as the Word documents, more than likely on all the Arts Council's websites. I know it's on the Haywood County Arts Council website. So there are a couple different options as to where you can access the application.
Yes, and just remember that you're submitting it through the Haywood County Arts Council. So you may get the application from your local Arts Council, but it needs to go through the Haywood County Arts Council for submission.
I have another question. Is there info/viewable work available on recipients of winners of similar grants available from the past?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I know that we're sort of, as we work to promote this, in the spring and onward, we want to highlight past recipients. But that's something that you'd have to sort of talk to each specific arts council about if they have any recommendations, because they're the ones who are sort of, I guess, would be more familiar with the specific recipients. But yeah, if you questions, again, two of my favorites that have been highlighted that I am aware of were Antoine Williams, who has done incredible work and was awarded a few Regional Artist Project Grant Program. But there are a lot of great projects in all disciplines. And so that specifically, you might have to talk to certain art councils because they'll have those records. Do you all have anything to add with that? I would say specifically go to the organization.
So this was formerly called the Regional Artist Project Grant and has shifted to this new Artist Support Grant. So if you look at the Arts Council's websites, you can probably see the awardees from the previous year. I know that you can see on the Asheville Area Arts Council's grants page our previous recipients with an explanation of what they were awarded funding for.
Oh, that's great. Perfect. Yeah. So you can start there. Jenny asked if you've applied before, is it possible to get feedback on your previous application? Yes. Yeah. You can get feedback on your previous application, the one you're working on now. Do you all want to add anything specific to that? I mean, feedback is encouraged if someone reaches out and asks for it, of course.
So normally we give feedback to all applicants when the award decisions are made. Did you not receive any follow-up information at that time? I would look back and just see if you did receive some feedback at that time.
Deborah said that she saw this presentation through the Cowee School in Franklin, and you're in Cashers. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Does it matter which organization we apply through? So you want to apply for the region, so the primary contact. So if you are in any of these counties, in this region, which is specifically, I'll name them one more time, Region 17. So this region, you would apply to the Haywood County Arts Council if you live in Buncombe, Haywood, Henderson, Polk, Rutherford, and Transylvania. If you should be applying to the Cowee School if you live in that region, and I can tell you that region right now specifically. You should be applying to the Cowee School if you live in the following counties: Cherokee, Clay, Macon, Jackson, Swain, and Graham. So they'll have it on their website. And Laura Brooks at the Cowee School is who you can talk to about your application if you have questions. Great, okay. So I don't have any other questions in the chat. Are you all getting any other questions, or does anyone else have any more questions?
I'm checking Facebook right now. I don't see anything on there. Let me check my email real quick.
Okay, Emmy asks, are regions established by population? Wondering if a high concentration area such as should be permitted its own region status. So a good question about the regions, because we did reorganize them differently from the Regional Artist Project Grant regions. We wanted to first and foremost group regions together or counties together in the region that were more similar, more analogous to be working together. So this is why this region sort of came about. We also looked for balance between the rural and urban counties to provide a more level playing field. And so Buncombe used to be a different region, and now they were the leader of that region. Now it's you all are sort of reorganized into more like-minded counties and more similar counties, I would say. And so that's how this region was decided. Do you all want to add anything to that or not? Lisa asks, can you anticipate how many visual artist applications you'll award in Henderson County? So applications are first and foremost decided on the artistic merit. They're decided on the number of applicants and the project. There's not a set number per county that will be decided. It's up to the panelists to award the grant recommendations based on the application they receive. So that could mean as like many in one county or equal across, but there's not going to be a set requirement for each county. It'll just be awarded based on artistic merit. Would you all agree that good way to phrase that.
Sounds perfect.
We would like someone from every county to receive an award, and we hope they do. But at the end of the day, it's the panelists that work with the project. But it's also why we reorganize the regions to hopefully create a more level playing field, right? So you all are more similar, and yeah. Anyways.
All right, so I'm not seeing any more questions on Facebook, and I don't have any in my inbox currently. And Katie, do you see any on your page?
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna put my email in the chat. If anyone, if at any point any of the arts councils have their plates full, I'm happy to also answer questions, just as a heads up. And again, this is not the only time you can ask questions. We are here to help you. When in doubt, apply, right? That's what I always say. When in doubt, apply. I always say that, meaning I've said it for the few weeks when promoting this grant. So, and I really encourage everyone to allocate 50% artist fees in their budget if they can.
We have one more question. So this is only an online application process, right? It isn't
No.
necessarily just an online process. You can either use the online process or you can mail in an application and all your materials.
So I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be doing another one of these virtual application workshops on September 14th at 6 p.m. So if you have friends or acquaintances that you think should attend this, please share. The registration information is available through the regional partners. And if you have additional questions, you're welcome to join the workshop again next time. A recording of this will also be made available through all the partners.
Yes, I'll get that put up on YouTube right after this meeting, and you can also watch the replay on our Facebook page as well.
And Sydney, thank you for running through the presentation for us all.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah, the PowerPoint, I'm gonna send it, they have it, the presented, so a PowerPoint, please reach out and they can send it to you with all the information.
The PowerPoint slides are available on the Asheville Area Arts Council's grants page right now. And then we'll also be sharing those, yes.
Oh, great. Yeah, so I guess thanks for having me again, right? Anyone can ask questions at any time, call or email, but email is probably best for right now, for those who probably don't work in the office or are remote. Yeah, this is exciting.
It is exciting.
Thank you, Sydney. And I don't see any more questions, so I guess we can conclude our workshop today. So thank you all for joining us, and we will get that out to you as soon as possible. Just give me a little bit because I'll need to download it and cut the beginning just a little. So thank you all and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody.